everybody. Welcome to the Next Gen GTM podcast, where we are going around and talking to different folks who are close to all of the innovation that is shaping go-to-market motions. Today, I am super excited to introduce you all to Jill. She is a top performing sales rep at HubSpot, one of the fastest growing, most innovative CRM products on the go-to-market scene. And Jill has actually been working with HubSpot for over 14 years, which gives her an incredible view into all of the things that have been happening, the innovation, and really seeing kind of what has been going on for over a decade. So Jill, welcome. I'm so excited to have you today. So to kick us all off, tell us a little bit more about, 14 years. What have you been doing at HubSpot? And give us a sense of all the things like that you've been working on and you've seen.
So it's been a wild ride. And when I think about the last 14 years, every year at HubSpot in January, the company basically reinvents themselves. We invent ourselves. We have new territories, new sales motions. And it's amazing to see how much change has gone on in the last 14 years. And when you asked the question initially, I really thought about, there was a day when Brian Halligan was still single-handedly interviewing all of us and choosing the early team, to where we get to now, where we have, 7,000 plus employees. I don't know, we may even be at 10,000 at this point, but just even the way we work. So when we started at HubSpot, we were in person. We were in a little, a place where basically an MIT incubator building, crawling all over each other. And one of the things that set HubSpot apart, which is why when I read the book Inbound Marketing at the time, culture was a big thing at HubSpot. And I had never really heard that from another company. But even from the beginning days at HubSpot, culture has always been a reoccurring theme, but it's changed a lot over the years. But I just think about even just the way we worked. Let's not even talk about the technology. I mean, we were in the office crawling on top of each other. You could hit an executive or a CEO. I mean, they were just in it with us, sitting in desks on sales calls, to a completely remote culture. I mean, it's something to live through. And when COVID hit and everyone, was going remote, HubSpot already was, I don't know if we were even at 30% remote already. We were way ahead of our time there culturally as well. And I think, we essentially drink our own champagne. We make all of these marketing sales tools, right, that can be done by remote teams before remote teams were even a thing. So I think there's change both through how we work, from, again, going from the scrappy startup, crawling all over each other in the office, to being this uber professional, still running at the speed of light, remote tech company, and just living through that. And how we've been able to keep people connected, and how the company continues to grow, but not in an office, it's a crazy ride. It really is.
It sounds crazy, right? Because how many people were at HubSpot when you started versus you said there's 7,000 people there today?
Yeah, I mean, when I started, I came in when it was less than 100 people. And the energy and the vibe and the drive, it's always been exhausting to a HubSpotter would say. A year working at HubSpot feels like 10 years of life. It has never slowed down. I would say that's one thing that's very consistent, and having worked in an environment, again, where the pace isn't ever slowing down, I would feel uneasy if I didn't work at a place that was so just on it, always developing the latest tools, always being ahead of the curve, and coming up with concepts and ideas that people think, quite frankly, we were crazy for every single time. And being okay with that, right? It creates that sales rep that just goes, listen, I'm going to walk into this situation. 10 people are going to think we're crazy. This is all new to them. And we're going to have to guide them down the path from day one, from day one of working at HubSpot.
So that's so interesting, right? Because it's almost like innovative technology is literally sewn into y'all's culture, right? Because it's
Right.
what you expect to use, right? I heard you say you eat what you cook. I heard you say that, you guys were always trying to push the envelope, even when maybe it was uncomfortable.
Always, right? So HubSpot came up with the concept of inbound marketing when people didn't even know what that word was, right? So there was a lot of education around that in the beginning. And as we progressed, we were a marketing software company. Now we're a sales CRM company, which is a completely different company. And living through that has been, probably the best education of my life. I'm so grateful for it. I'm so grateful for it.
That is super interesting, right? Because you talk about there's an evolution there, right? We started out with a customer use case, we became customer obsessed, and then, we evolved. And I think, what I also hear you saying is HubSpot has always been about building those relationships. How have you seen the technology that was there 14 years ago, 10 years ago, 5 years ago change? And what has that experience been like, right? Because change is sometimes good. It is sometimes like tough, and especially in sales, right? Like there's very low margin of risk and error, right? Like you've got to go in there and get something done. How have you seen technology evolve in your go-to-market motion over that time frame, being at such an innovative, like, you're going 80 miles an hour
all the time, and I'll even step back, because if I look at my sales career from even pre HubSpot, it wasn't that long ago that I was using a pen and paper and a pencil and a notebook to talk to customers and follow my sales process, going door to door, selling insurance around a table in an office, to now I almost never meet my customers. I work in basically a war room with 17 different tabs open, and Slack and instant message and HubSpot going, and LinkedIn going. It's a totally different career. It's a totally different sales motion. And every year we build more tools to build on that digital sales native. And I was saying to one of my colleagues the other day, it's just like, wow, if you're in sales in today's market and you are not leveraging a CRM, AI for scheduling, instant message or Slack when you're working with employees, because they're 90% of the time remote, at least in our world, while you're doing sales presentations online through Zoom. This is an entirely different motion than reading the room with people having a one-to-one conversation in a sale. It's entirely different. So it's seeing sales evolve from before I was in tech to where it is now. It's not even the same. It's not even the same job. It's still about people. It's still about connecting with people. But it is all about leveraging technology if you're going to be successful.
Wow.
Everything is done digitally now, which is totally different. You have to be a master of a CRM. You have to be the master of LinkedIn. You have to be the master at articulation and thought, and spoken word is really all we have now, right? So you have to be, it's just a different game in its entirety. And living through it through HubSpot, I was in the early days working through the night, selling to our Asia Pacific market on top of a mountain through Skype. Wow. Right? It's a wild ride to then, now we have corporate offices everywhere, which aren't really even offices, but we have remote employees within time zones. It's crazy. It's been a crazy ride.
And, you talk about some of those challenges. What are the challenges that you see that either sales teams or sales folks, what do you see their challenges being when it comes to really getting those new skills that you kind of talked about? Like what have you noticed?
The sales reps that are not quick to adapt technology. And I'll be the first one to say, I slowly adapt technology. It's hard for me. I have to read the instructions or read the wiki page over and over and over again before it's internalized. Why do I do it? I know that if I don't, I will be left behind. I will not be able to keep my job. And I think that's the hardest thing for sales reps today, right? If you've been in sales for a long time, you may be stuck in your ways, but you've got to learn how to leverage multiple things being thrown at you and leveraging technology in order to make your sales better, or you will be left behind. I talk to companies all the time that still maybe don't even have a CRM. And I look at the BDRs that come into HubSpot now. They're not a sales rep like you would think. They're kind, thoughtful people that have to be able to have an intelligent conversation to help someone. And they have to be able to leverage about 5 different technologies at the same time in order to make it happen. It's a very different job. And that's hard. And I watch the young BDRs and I have to ask them questions because I have to continually learn. And I watch them and I go, wow, this is the sales rep of today. It's this young person who knows how to dig, who knows how to leverage LinkedIn, who knows how to leverage Google and alerts and company information and a CRM properly, and is really, really organized and knows how to prospect well and is just, like a machine. That's the best sales rep today. It's crazy. It's a different person.
Interesting. And, you've mentioned a little bit, right? You've got I've noticed you mentioning some kind of like, it's a partnership, right? Like you have, right now there's a lot of talk about AI, and then there's a lot of talk about HI, right? Human intelligence. You've got artificial intelligence, you've got human intelligence. They're both coming fast. HubSpot, right, is leading the charge on some of these tools too. Like you guys aren't going to be behind. You're going to be out front. How are you starting to see that relationship form, right? So today it sounds like you're saying, hey, you've got to be a commander of all of these different platforms. As AI, how does that relationship evolve? Like, how do you see that partnership, and how do you coach, the reps that come to you and say, hey, how do I do this? Like, this is your job and this is the job of your tools. And how do you find that balance?
Yeah, it's hard, but it's like anything. You have to break it down and make it simple for yourself. And then the hardest thing is to just remember your most important thing. If you're in sales or business development rep, what's the most important thing? It's generating new sales and not getting too distracted with, well, I don't know how this schedule will work or that, just get the meetings, get the meetings. Number one, get the meetings, keep the meetings. And a little bit of do the best you can, but you have to be open to learning, and you have to be coachable, and you have to be able to change, because it's coming at you. But you also have to be able to use your brain. The computers have not yet ruled out the human. They have not, right? So when someone talks to you, you better be kind, you better be knowledgeable, and you better be adding value, right? Otherwise, they're just going to go right to the AI bot and ask some more questions.
Yeah, and there's something going on there, right? Because I feel like, it's that same thing of like, there's some tasks where you're like, we want to automate those tasks, right? Those are the tasks that are holding you back. They're slowing you down. They're distracting you. They're in the way. And then there are some tasks where it's like, this is the moment, right? Like this is the moment when you're going to add that value. You're going to create that relationship. Can you give me some example of types of tasks that you're like, guys, we need to be automating these? And then types of moments that you're like, these are the moments that we, the humans, need to always own and be in control of and crush.
100%. So we can think about something, but let's talk about like sales tasks and sequencing and follow-up and prospecting, right? There's so much of that now that is going to be automated. If you're a salesperson who is manually creating a task and then going and manually creating a follow-up email, if you're going to start to do some form of targeting of a contact or a company and you don't have that automated, you will be left in the dust, right?
You'll be like clicking.
Yeah, you will, your competition will have already contacted 10 companies 8 or 9 times, and you will have contacted one. So that's number one. However, a lot of people have that technology now. So where's the human element come into? And I deal with this too. What content am I putting in this messaging that I'm just going to start sending to people? And is it of value? Does it show me as a person? Do I sound like another bot that every executive is getting an email from that sounds, just like
greetings?
yeah. Hey, just following up. You didn't read my last email. I don't know you, but you should be responding to me. Why aren't you responding to my emails? Like, this is where you send something. Hey, here's a podcast that I thought was interesting. Or knowing what I know about your role and doing a little bit of research about your company. Here's a conference that I think you might like. This is where we add value and we don't sound like a robot. That's where this comes in, right? Just being a human. But there are certain tasks in your day. If you're not leveraging a CRM to follow your sales process, and if you're not leveraging certain sales sequences or meeting links for your calendar, like these are tools that are readily available to everyone. Your competition will have twice as many meetings than you. And there's things that technology can change, but then there's things that technology can't, like sales math. There are 24 hours in the day. You can't change that natural sales math. If you ask 3 people to buy, 1 person will buy. Okay. It's just like, it's just how it works. The only way to get more sales is to ask 6 people to buy so that you can get 2 yeses, or 18 people to buy so you get 3 yeses. And if you are competing against a professional who knows how to leverage AI, a CRM, sales sequencing, sales enablement tools, they will get twice as many meetings as you. And that's just a fact, right? You're increasing your at bats.
Yeah.
That hasn't changed at sales. The only thing that you can do is
right? Because like you have those spray and pray, right? Where it's like you're just batting. I feel like you're just, whipping the bat left and right. And then you have folks that maybe are spending too much time, right? Bowing up and
right. Yeah, making it
doing everything perfect. And yeah, maybe they got those leads, but they didn't get to like almost escape velocity. So what I hear you saying is there is a almost like that peak, right? Of again, you want to use your automations to get you to a place where you are competitive. But then, when it comes down to those human moments, I know that I find, I don't know about you, but there's so much that you can do to enrich your lead data today, right? You can now AI can go, do research on behalf for thousands of prospects. But like, what's really interesting, right, is it's still the humans putting together those insights of why that research is relevant. Like I can go understand the answer to a question about 1,000 different leads, but I still think it's the rep who put that connection together, that like, if they are interested in this, that would mean that they could be interested in this. Like I still see reps doing that insightful thinking. Are there any things like that you see where it's like, these are the, use cases or connections where like those humans are able to just trounce the automations in terms of thoughtfulness?
Yeah. Like when you're thinking of, for instance, if you're doing some prospecting on LinkedIn and you're looking at different personas and you're looking at people's different titles, right? You don't send the same messaging to a CEO that you would send to a sales director or that you would send to a marketing manager. Like these are where the human comes into play that says, hey, I need to be relevant to this human being, not just another bot that's just blanket sending something clearly that is very me and salesy and not relevant to what this individual would be working on, and that's in the B2B sales motion, right? It's about sending, and you have to be thoughtful on it. I mean, I have to put myself on KPIs and requirements so that I do it too. Oh, sorry about my hair here. I I have to make for example, today, I have to make a sequence for myself today, Maddie, that is targeted to my persona. And I have some templates, but they don't sound like me. I have to make sure that there's a video that sounds like me. That's Jill. That's my authentic self. I don't like to send out emails unless it has me talking so that they know that I'm not a robot. And I'm going to have to take an hour or two to do it today. And then I'm going to make sure that I find 5 targets. I'm going to make sure that I send different content to different people. But the robots haven't automated that yet. If they did, they wouldn't have me.
Yeah.
Right. So, but these are the things that a rep has to do, right? You have to make up your own content. Don't rely on stuff that sounds really salesy, and you have to send it from your authentic self.
It's interesting, right? Because I hear you talking about, it's really like the creativity, the art. And I think there are times, right, in the sales motion where that is to get that conversation started, right? The art of that is so nuanced, right? And we're not seeing, right, maybe those high promise tools deliver that same level of human connection as humans do. And then you kind of mentioned, but there are parts of the process that, at that point you're like, just execute and automate, right? Like, great. Now they do want to talk. One of the things that we notice in the motion is, speed to a positive response. Like what we see sometimes teams doing is they're spending so much time on the art of, getting that lead's attention and getting that conversation started, right? And then it actually works. And it's almost like they're like, oh God, what do I do?
What do I say? How do I talk to people?
So
right?
Walk me through that part of your go-to-market motion. Like how should reps be thinking about those things? And again, in terms of like, what tools are you seeing that are helping? What should the expectations be? What problems are you seeing? Once you do get that lead's attention and you bring them into your ecosystem in the true HubSpot inbound fashion.
There are so many places to go to continually work on your game for, it sounds so business-like because we use it internally, but to have your discovery calls, essentially your first call with someone to make sure that, you want to do business together. And there's just, I'd say this, there's places like P-Club.io. This is a great place for people to go to learn how to be the best SaaS sales rep that they could be, and teaches you how to have conversations with people. These are skills you have to work on. You have to be open to working on, and you have to critique. There's also, although I think, wow, doesn't everybody have that? I forget that not everybody has something like a Gong or something that's recording your calls, that you review your calls and you listen to yourself speak, and you listen. There's technology now that basically gives you a heat map. I'll go into my Gong calls like, Jill, you talk too much. Why are you talking too much? It'll literally tell you, like, you need to reduce the amount of time you're talking. They don't want to hear from you. Like, you need to get them talking. You need to ask more inquisitive questions. And I take for granted that this is a technology that I have at my fingertips, but it's, number one, you have to overcome the fear of talking to people. You just have to do it. And you have to know that you're going to fall on your face. You're going to sound ridiculous sometimes.
Yeah.
And again, it's the reason why you need to have so much more outreach to get to the call in the first place, to be able to have enough at-bats to start feeling comfortable and confident when you get on a phone call. And there is nothing but experience that's going to get you there. There's no book. There's no coaching. You just have to do it. And you have to overcome the fear that you're not going to know what to say.
And it's almost like time in front of the customer in that way, or the prospect or the lead, right? There's that level of like, it's not just at bats, right? For at bats sake, for the numbers, it's also just, that's where you're going to go from good to great.
That's right.
It's not like in front of your inbox, right? It's in front of
people. Right. And turning off all the notifications, learning to be an active listener, and really engaging in conversation. That's the only way.
It's really interesting to hear you talk, right? Because in my head, I'm like, okay, what is Jill saying? She's saying that the sales rep needs to play the role of, command center operator, right? Like, these tools work for me. I set them up so that we're giving that individualized personalization, but at scale, right? It's got to be enough at bats that I'm not just, making handcrafted gifts, but then when I'm in front of the customer or the prospect, it's like,
Zone in, turn it off. It's true. You got to zone in and you've got to connect with people. And, people are connecting over Zoom. So everything you do has to feel a little bit exaggerated. You're going to talk louder. You're going to have more expressive facial, like it has to be a little bit exaggerated so people know that you're paying attention to them and you're listening and you're active listening. And at the same time, this is where technology is also always up on the screen. In preparing for the call, you want to make sure that you get exactly what you want to get out of the conversation. So you'll have a playbook or you'll have a screen open. You'll be actively taking notes to make sure that you're asking all the right questions. So there is an element of the technology still around there, but it's about being comfortable enough to be an active listener. And it only comes with experience. I haven't seen any other way of mastering that. And it's interesting the way you ask it too, because again, the prospecting phase now is almost robotic. It does feel that way because there is so much tech that you have to leverage and you have to get good at. But the one-to-one conversation people element of what's going to move a deal forward is still not very techy. It's still about being a human who actively listens, understands the market, can understand your business, and has basic business acumen skills. Again, that only comes with over time.
I know it's almost like the role of the tech is to pave the journey to that moment. Like,
yeah, 100%. In the simplest form, the technology is to get the meeting. And then the technology there is to keep you organized through the process so that you are not letting things fall through the cracks. Because again, in sales, the best sales reps don't necessarily hold all of the information. I will tell you, and I've said it a million times, the months that are the top months that I've ever had, I was the most organized. I was the most on top of my game. I sent out, I was just methodical in the sales process and I didn't waver from that. And that just comes from organization, which is the whole need for a CRM in the first place. Organization, activity, organization, and follow through. It is. It's like the tech is there to keep you organized. And the tech is there to make it easier for you to get the meeting in the first place. And then you have to have that human element to close the deal. You have to. And then when you talk about corporate sales, there's this whole nother art of multi-threading and talking to lots of people. And, so there's that, but that's another human element too. You got to listen to people and you've got to adapt to people's personalities and you've got to understand what's in it for them. Not what's in it for you, what's in it for them. And that's a human element. I've yet to find a robot yet that has enough empathy to understand individual needs and what's in it for them. I haven't found that yet. Maybe it's coming, but
no. And I think, it's such an interesting picture that it paints, right? Like if I play that back, it's like, hey, use the technology to get the meeting. You set the stage for this really impactful human-to-human conversation. And then the technology plays this support role of I'm keeping you organized.
That's right.
All so that you can get more human interaction, right? Like the whole role of the technology is more minutes in front of prospects and customers face to face.
That's right.
That's, to your point, that's what closes deals, right?
Yep. And when I think about HubSpot and how much we've evolved and where the CRM is going, the path is for adoption of the technology. It's to make it simple enough so that the sales rep, it's easier to just get in front of people and talk to people. We take more administrative tasks away. We have one place where you go and you can do your job. And I think about anytime now we're leveraging technology and AI on the sales side, it's about getting to a place where a sales rep is just leveraging the technology more. Adoption rates is the biggest killer in that stuff, right?
Say more. Why is that?
Well, I mean, if the sales rep isn't adopting the technology, it isn't adopting a sales process and isn't adopting a CRM, the business can't make business decisions. The business can't forecast. I mean, it affects everything, aside from the fact that that sales rep is never going to sell as well as if they're incredibly organized and have everything, really the process really, really down. So when HubSpot came into the sales game, our mission was totally different than any other CRM. There were huge players already in the game that had every bell and whistle you could ever want in a CRM. Our mission was to create a sales solution that people would use, that a sales rep would log the call, that a sales rep would log the email, that a sales rep would log the call, log the meeting. And now where the technology is going is now the technology is taking my notes for me. Now the technology is writing my follow-up email, even if it's just a template for me. All of those things that just take so much time and administrative work, that's what the technology is trying to take that away. So again, the sales rep it's freeing up sales rep time to what? Have more to one human interaction and human conversations. That's really what it's for. And adoption is the name of the game at HubSpot. It's why all this stuff works. That's the way all this stuff is being invented.
And I think, it's funny, right? Because when you talk about adoption, especially in the world like where we live, right? We build agents that do some of this stuff for people, right? Like you don't adopt it anymore, right? It's doing its thing and it's posted, right? But what I found was whether it's, a fully autonomous AI agent or a note taker, there is this level of control that you have to give up to adopt a new tool, right? And that can be really hard, like to give up a little bit of control because, at least if I can control it, it's safe, right? But it's going to make, but my bats might be lower. But because like one of the ones you mentioned was, we're using call recordings. And now you're like, ooh, that tool is now, kind of it's giving data out that I don't control. How has that felt, over the last 14 years? Again, when you're bringing on new tools, what have you felt that like, because, most people like don't adopt tools. It's not because they maybe they just forget, but sometimes there's a thing about it that they just don't want to. Maybe.
Well, all of the technology puts a real big spotlight on everything you're doing.
Oh, okay.
Right? So that can be a little bit jarring for someone who's used to no one listening in on their phone calls and no one watching the meetings that they're having and no one reading their emails. I mean, we're at a point now, I have a dashboard on our team. Everyone can see everybody's email. So our manager can start seeing like who they're, everything is so transparent now down to every word that you say on every call. So for someone who's not used to being monitored, it's a little jarring. But if you keep an open mind that, hey, these are for myself so that these are coaching moments so that I can get even better. But that's hard for people because reality, like all this stuff is, the spotlight is on you. Everything is being recorded. Everything is being analyzed.
Well, and I heard a quote. It was actually, I believe it was Dan Martell, and he was talking about how to think about, resourcing, right? Because another part of technology is it's a resource, right? It's like someone, works for you so that you can go do other things, right? And he said like 80% done by someone else is actually better than 100% done by me, right? Where it's like, you're never going to get something that's like, oh, it did it the exact same way that Jill would do it. But if they did 80% of it at half the cost that you cost and you could go do something else, that's technically a win. In a world where we are looking at each of these pieces of the puzzle, right? Like down to the sand, how do you balance that, right? Like, how do you think about, is it true that 80% done by a tool is better than 100% done by me if it gets me more at bats? How do you navigate that?
I would say yes.
And why?
I would say yes. I mean, I would say that, it's really interesting is no longer do you see an executive. So let's say I was an executive back in the day, I'd have a secretary at my level of work. I would have a secretary who's typing up my emails, who's taking my calls, who's screening my calls, who's entering my notes, who's telling me what I need to do every day.
Sure.
That secretary role is gone, right? It's not there. So my secretary who tells me where I'm going today is like my Google Calendar, right? My secretary is my meeting scheduling link. That's like, here, I don't know my calendar, book it through my secretary, which is basically my meeting calendar link. Or my stenographer, right? That's typing up who's recording my calls and typing up all my notes for me, and so that I have a transcript of my call. I mean, if I think about it, I have 5 or 6 different technologies that are basically my secretaries because I don't have one, right? That's what it is. It's an assistant. It is an assistant who's taking notes for you, who's, keeping you organized, who's telling you what you need to do, who's telling you where you need to go, and who's coaching you along the way, saying, hey, Jill, you spoke too much on your sales conversation. Here's like 5 other things that you probably should be doing, including, speaking less, right? So I think about it. I mean, it's literally, and I do take it for granted because I'm in it and I work for HubSpot and we make all this stuff and I use it every day. But I probably have 5 or 6 people working for me at any given hour. That's a technology. That is a technology piece that would have been, a full-blown job.
Yeah. And then obviously, what are you doing, right? When you're not doing that stuff,
Right.
You're off in front of customers.
In front of customers, prospecting, actively thinking on a regular basis, what can I do to get in front of more people? What's the content that's resonating? What am I hearing on sales calls? What am I hearing of people's business challenges are, so that when I do send out sequences or emails, they all surround what people are experiencing right now.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So you've seen it all. You've seen things come and go, right? You've seen technology that I'm sure everybody's like, this is going to be the next big thing, right? And then it wasn't, right? And then you've seen people say to you, like, I think y'all are nuts. And
Crazy.
Now that's the way it gets done. Can you talk about what has made technology live? Like, what technology do you see that's like the hype is real? Like, has there been anything you've seen where you're like, the hype around this is real? This is even its early stages. I think it's going to be big, if I had to guess. And then has there been any technology where you're like, again, we can't predict the future, but I'm not buying the hype? Like,
Right.
where's your hype? Where's your hype right now in the space?
I'm going to go back to things that keep everybody on the same page and organized. It's a necessity, right? It's having a CRM, or just having a central place where everyone is working from. Is you can't live without it in today's day and age, where all the sales reps, all of marketing, all of sales are all working in the same place. And again, that was a concept that made no sense to people 15 years ago. We came up with a term at HubSpot called smarketing. I actually know the guy, Dan Tyre, who called it, when it was like bringing sales and marketing together. That was a crazy concept, that sales and marketing would be so communicative, but it's because we have a central place where everything is organized and everything's happening, and where everybody is working from. That is just, I don't know how you operate any other way. But that was really progressive 15
Right.
years ago.
I was about to say smarketing. I mean, it's everything everyone's saying. Like some people don't even know the difference, right? Like where does marketing,
where does sales begin and where does marketing end? Right. There was a time when that wasn't a thing. The marketing was over here and sales was doing their thing over here, and they never had a conversation together, let alone using all the same tools at the same time and seeing what everybody's doing. So I would say just the concept of organization and keeping everything as much as you can in a centralized place where people are working and communicating together. It's only getting more and more important, right? It's only getting more and more important, especially with remote teams, especially with, markets and you have to be working together, and you have to be, sales and marketing teams have to be working together. So that is again, I forget because I'm at HubSpot that's not a thing that everybody does. But that is what our software and technology is meant for, is so that all of the teams are communicating in one place and stuff is organized and keeps you on the same track, right?
and where do you think that should start and stop? Like, where do you think, we hear a lot about marketers being like, our job is to get them to MQL, right? And then the sales, there've historically been these like very clear, what's mine is yours now. And like, what do you believe that should look like?
I think it's still very clear. Because I think that there's definitely the job of a marketer, and then there's definitely the job of a salesperson, who is going to be the person that is interacting one-to-one with the customer to get the order. Mm-hmm. That's the job of a salesperson. And the job of a marketer is to, and it hasn't changed much in the last 10 years, it is remarkable how it hasn't changed. It's just the volume of which they have to create content and be relevant on their brand voice and their brand messaging. It just gets more and more and more important. I still feel like they are very clearly defined roles. What's different is now they have to communicate to each other so that the marketer can actually see if the sales rep is doing their job and entering their stuff and remaining, organized and showing what happens with that lead to close, then the marketer can make better and sound decisions, right? And then the sales rep can influence, hey, these are the things that I'm hearing on these calls. Like, we need to start creating content and conversations around that. That's for more of like a sales executive conversation. But they still are very defined in that they are different roles, but they have to communicate now.
Yeah, different roles too, with like, it's get the meeting, right? But, and would you say they're both responsible for the meeting, or would you say, hey, marketing gets a lead, sales gets, like, how does that, right? Because that's where it gets a little gray, right?
It does. But in the end of the day, it's a sales rep to get the meeting. Mm-hmm. It really is. Mm-hmm. I think that's why sales reps exist.
There you go. You heard it here first.
Yeah, I really do. I mean, I should say that. I mean, our marketing team is, they are absolutely spectacular. And I will absolutely get meetings that, I just happen to stumble on. They had an inquiry and they come into HubSpot. But the majority of that is not the case.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm hearing the hype around what is helping people and companies collaborate in real time, swap information, be organized, have it all central, be able to, have that seamless transfer of information. Like, that hype is real. I'm hearing you say yes. Any hype that you're like, I'm not buying. I don't think this technology is what's gonna make the world a better place, or you're like, no, I love, what's your stance?
I think I've been working in tech for too long, or maybe it's just the right amount of time, that I never look at any new technology, never is a strong word, and say, oh, that's just a lot of hype. I always go, I wonder if that's going to pan out, because you could see a path where it would. These like virtual reality thing, like the goggles and the people, I think it looks crazy, but you'll go into restaurants and people have these things on. I'm like, it kind of seems a little crazy to me, but maybe that is what's going to happen. I think I've just seen so many things happen that you just don't know. You don't actually know what's going to stick. You don't know.
But it sounds like you've got that curiosity, right? And you mentioned, like, even at the beginning of this conversation, like, that's what's in the culture. Okay, so last question to kind of wrap this up, right? So we have one technology that's, it's the one that everyone's talking about. There's lovers, there's haters, there's everyone in between. AI. All right. Because and it's fair, right? Like I'm in the AI space, so I get it, right? There are elements of this that are unknown, that's real. And that can be good. That can be bad. We have tools out there that are doing very, very much so good. We have tools out there that are making a mess everywhere. So the reality is for certain, that uncertainty. What do you think? Do you think AI is like, guys, this is going to change how the game? Do you think it's going to kind of come and go? You've had 14 years of seeing this stuff. What's your vibe? What's your prediction?
It is here to stay. And I by no means declare myself any expert on AI at all. If anything, I was a late adopter, kind of scared, even being in tech. It's just kind of like, really, is this really happening? It's here. It's been here for longer than people, I think, know or understand. And I mean, it's the biggest thing since the invention of the internet. And where it's going to go, I would be the last person to say, where I know it's going to go. All I know is that it's here and it's real. And you have to be open enough to learn as much as you can. It's great. I just see, even in our CRM, I mean, it just, the stuff that the generative AIs that's built in, there's going to be a world where you talk to HubSpot and, a report that would take the most technical revenue operations person to put together. You just ask HubSpot to do it and it spits out the report. Hey, HubSpot, I want to have blah, blah, blah. And I mean, the technology is there. It's not officially released. Stuff is in beta, but I mean, it's there. And it's, once people get a taste of that, there's no way that it's going away. Oh, I want to go back to writing my own reports and spending 4 hours getting a report out of HubSpot. No, I don't want the AI bot to do it for me. It's like, yeah, it's here.
Yeah, right. I mean, that's right. You're like, no. I'd like to go back to that world where I used to, pick up my own, it's so true, right? And that's a good place, like, that I always like to leave it, right? Because you've got that quote that was famous on Twitter. It's like, I don't want AI to write poetry for me and be creative for me. I want it to do my laundry, right? Like I want to get rid of. So what is your hopeful future, right? Because again, all of these technologies can be used for great good and they can be used for negative things. And it was actually Dharmesh, the CEO of HubSpot, who, as a founder, I mean, he's like, gosh, yeah, we just think he's the best. And he said one time, the role of AI is to take workflows from point and click to describe and done. I just think that paints such an exciting future. So what are you most excited about that you think, what would your, gosh, if AI were to really take off, I would like to see AI do XYZ for me as a salesperson, for salespeople, for go-to-market motions. What's your hopeful future for AI?
I'm going to have to go with Dharmesh on this. It's just the work being done, right? Just total personal note. When I saw some of the AI, again, that writes follow-up emails, that transcribes calls, that all of this stuff that would take me hours and hours to do, it was mind-blowing knowing that was just done. Just hours of life. And it's like, well, what are you going to do with those hours? Well, I could spend them, with my family, or I could spend them getting more sales calls. I mean, to take 2 or 3 hours to 4 hours out of my, crunching work of stuff that I don't want to do. I have to say, what's exciting about it is just that busy work getting done that I don't have to do. That's, to me, yeah.
And what you will do with all of that other stuff, right?
Yeah. And what would I do with that time?
I love it. Well, Jill, this has been a wonderful session. I feel like I have learned a ton. And also, I feel like I've been definitely just inspired, but to hear someone, right? Because for a lot of us that are, leading go-to-market motions, building products for CRMs and pipelines, this moment feels very, this is our reality, right? Like this is, for young companies like mine, this is the go-to-market that we didn't know about those other ones. So it's really cool for me to hear, and I'm sure for others to hear, how evolution has been part of the sales process for a long time. It's constantly evolving, and this is just another chapter. And I hope for anyone listening to this, you take encouragement and just think about, gosh, look how much Jill has done as a seasoned salesperson, right? And how much you've evolved and taken on this challenge and become something, in each season. So, gosh, what a cool opportunity for us all to get to hear with someone with so much in the trenches experience too, right? Like, I think a lot of what you said, we're all there. Like, most of us that are trying to grow our businesses and build those account bases, like we're all right there. So you were able to kind of speak to that bigger picture, but also speak to the realities I think a lot of us are facing. So Jill, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. And guys, hope you had a good time.
Thanks, Maddie.